The 1980s. It was the decade that changed the world. As from that moment it became possible for ordinary people to own a real computer. But no matter which brand or model you chose, they basically all faced the same problem. And that problem is data storage. Or in other words, how to load and save data, and how to do this affordably. Although the disk drive is superior in many ways, for many young users, who only wanted to play games, a disk drive was simply too expensive, leaving them no choice as to go for the only other option: ordinary audio cassette tapes. Tapes were cheap, widely available, and some brands allowed the use of an ordinary shoebox cassette player, which reduced the initial cost of your home computer setup. For a beginning user on a budget, tapes were the perfect medium of that time. This resulted in software, mostly games, to be professionally released on both disc and tape, with the advantage of tapes being much cheaper to produce and distribute than discs. This because the technology and infrastructure for audio tapes was already operational for at least a decade. Data storage using a standard cassette recorder does require some skills, as the device must be set up correctly. Saving the data too loud or too soft will cause a distorted recording and it will never load again. But play back the perfect recording too loud or too soft and it won't load either. Therefore, many brands produced dedicated data recorders, devices in which everything was already set up correctly. This improved the reliability of the system and therefore greatly improved the user experience. The 1980s were also the decade in which double-deck cassette players started to emerge, making it possible to quickly copy any audio tape. And it didn't take long before home computer users realized that they might be able to copy their game tapes in the same way. This accelerated the problem of large-scale music and software piracy. But making a copy of a game is one thing. Making a good copy is something else, as simply duplicating a tape is not without its pitfalls. Because just like the shoebox cassette player, there are many buttons and dials that need to be set correctly in order to get it right. And getting everything just right didn't really work out for the kids who wanted to make a copy on their big brother's hi-fi system, which resulted in a lot of confusion and disappointment when they gave their badly copied game to a friend. Should Commodore have released a double-deck version of the 1530 dataset, then that might have been a big success. Now, only 40 years too late, one of those kids who failed making a copy on his big brother's hi-fi system has decided to correct this mistake and build the device that Commodore could have created, but never did, never did, never did, never did, never did, never did. Commodore have released a double-deck version of the 1530 dataset, then that might have been a big success, and build the device that Commodore could have created, but never did, never did, never did, never did, never did, never did. This unique device was given an appropriate name, the 1560 dataset. Fully functional and finally on the home computing scene. And only 40 years too late. The beauty of some plastics is that they are able to dissolve in acetone. One of those plastics is named ABS, and it appears that the dataset is made of exactly that material. By cutting down the remains of the two cases, a glue of exactly the same color can be created, allowing for a perfectly seamless result. Unfortunately, this did not go as planned. It took weeks to properly dissolve, and in the end, it resulted in some very brittle yellowed stuff. So that idea was abandoned. What didn't take long was to notice that the front of the dataset was damaged in the process. So, back to square one. friction welding is a technique that works much faster. Any ABS 3D printer filament will work. So, there is plenty of welding material available. By welding the two parts together, a strong bond between the parts is created. How can this possibly go wrong? After a few minutes of welding, the result already looks very promising. Because the parts are welded together, the end result is expected to be very strong. A simple test will demonstrate exactly how strong this really is. Now that we know what to expect, we can repeat the process. After removing the excess material, strengthen the joint with some metal and two-component epoxy glue. The 1530 dataset, with its light colors, never looked as cool as the later 1531 dataset. Which is the device intended for the Commodore 16 and +4 computers. It looks the same, but it has a completely incompatible connector. By painting it all with a stylish black, the cool looks are achieved and all the welds and joints can be completely hidden. When restoring a device that's 4 decades old, make sure that you also replace all the rubber drive belts. A simple but crucial task that is easy to forget. If you can hold a Q-tip, you can clean the tape heads. An important task to allow good performance and to prevent your tapes from getting dirty. What also requires cleaning is the switch on the printed circuit board. A bit of contact cleaner is all it takes to make a potentially noisy switch function like it's new. Because the tape mechanisms aren't mechanically linked, it is extra important to make sure that both tapes run at the correct speed. And finally, if you want your copy to be readable in other devices, make sure that the tape heads are aligned to perfection. As an alignment reference, you can use, in principle, any original game tape. This new device connects to the computer in the same way as any other dataset. By using the switch on the back, the user can select from which tape the computer will load, but also from which source tape B will be saving. This device could be perfect for making tape backups. And after making one copy, you might even wonder, why not copy the entire collection? Doubling the chances of lasting another 40 years, it's a bit of work perhaps. But it may be worth it, maybe worth it, maybe worth it, maybe worth it. Unfortunately, all these extra tapes do create a new problem. Or actually it's the same old problem of storage. Because, where do you put all these extra tapes?